Do you care deeply about what's happening in the world right now, but you find yourself totally frozen? Believe me, I get it. I know that with the flood of bad news that's happening all the time right now, it's really hard to not, at certain moments, feel like it's impossible to do something to make a difference. But I'm here to tell you that if you're stuck in that freeze mode, it's not because you're apathetic, it's not because you're lazy, and it's not because you're not paying attention. It's because what's actually happening is crushing in many ways, and all of us are responding in ways that are classic trauma responses. Ending up in freeze mode is actually really common right now amongst people who care very deeply and feel very deeply about the tragic and harmful circumstances that are taking place in this country every day. But one of the things that's really dangerous about freeze mode is that once we're in it, we may end up feeling isolated and alone and as though there's nothing to be done about it. And so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to walk you through why smart, justice-driven people get stuck in freeze mode and what it actually takes to get out of it. Because one of the things that I've become an expert in, unfortunately, over the last 10 years, in terms of the clients that I work with on a regular basis, is folks who come to us so overwhelmed by current events that they don't know what to do next. And that's actually not good for any of us, because if you know you're here to make a difference and you're called to make a difference in a way that creates really big change, staying in that mode of being frozen is actually incredibly counterproductive. So I'm going to walk you through how to get out of that freeze mode so that we can actually start making a difference, and also what to do next. If you're new here, I'm Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin. I'm a lifelong activist and organizer, a former Wall Street and human rights lawyer, and for the last 15 years, I've worked with leaders just like you who want to change the world, but maybe are frozen, don't know how to do it, or feel completely disconnected from their purpose. Today, as a part of our regular videos on this channel, I'm going to walk you through the process that we take our clients through when they're feeling completely frozen and paralyzed by current events. But before we get started, this channel is for folks who know that they want to make a difference in this incredibly difficult time. We drop videos every week on how you can make a difference in your world right now. So drop us a subscribe, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, and click that bell notification so you never miss another video. So I want to talk to you about the real transformation that's possible when you commit to getting out of freeze mode. We've worked with hundreds of clients who have come to us in that place and have gone from not knowing how to make a difference to, for instance, launching a mutual aid program that feeds hundreds in their city. To going from feeling paralyzed and really alone to building multi-state coalitions for change, from being afraid to speak up to becoming trusted strategists inside the movements that they work in, and in some instances, to even using their voice in furtherance of running for office. But in order to do all of those things, you have to have a deep understanding of where freeze response comes from in the first place, and you've also got to understand the tools and skills you need to get out of it. So let's talk. First and foremost, I want you to understand that freeze response is a very normal reaction to abnormal circumstances. In fact, it's a part of our nervous system's response to danger. When your brain and your body are doing exactly what they were wired to do in the face of danger, one of the things that may happen to you is that you hide. You may wait it out to wait for things to get better. You may find yourself in a place of isolating because that's the only place that feels safe. The challenge of this moment, though, is that this incredibly difficult time in our history calls for people to actually get out and do things to make a difference. And when we're stuck in freeze mode, we can't do that. So getting yourself out of freeze mode requires 3 core things that we teach inside the Ripple Effect Institute. And I'm going to walk you through those right now. The first thing that you need is nervous system literacy and the understanding of how to ground yourself into practices of resilience. So one of the key things about the freeze response is that when you start to recognize how it feels in your own body, you know when you are heading into it or when you're already there. One of the things that's really key is when you're feeling that frozen state of overwhelm, take a pause and tune in to how it feels in your own skin. For me, when I'm in freeze response, it feels like this tremendous tightness across my chest and my belly, to the point that it almost feels like I become solid, like there's no fluidity or flexibility, and I settle into this place of feeling really, really, really stuck. Understanding how the freeze response feels in your own body is an important signal to your brain. Because one of the things that you can do in response to understanding when you're in a freeze response is actually to then take steps to get out of it. We also want you to understand how to build resilience practices into your daily life that will remove you from that place of being frozen. And one of the key things about this that I want you to understand is that when you're seeking to mobilize yourself out of a freeze response, that's not ignoring fear. It's not ignoring danger. It's actually learning to regulate your central nervous system, even when you're in a place where you feel like you're under threat. Now, it is very important in this place to understand whether or not the threat that you're under is actually real. For many of us, particularly those of us who have certain privileges based on hierarchies that we're trained into from the moment we're born in this culture, we may sometimes feel like we're under threat when we're actually not. Often, when you're sitting in your own house, staring into the screen of your phone, and you're subjecting yourself to the nonstop fire hose of bad news, you may trigger a freeze response in yourself when you are not actually in any immediate danger. Now, that doesn't mean the threat to marginalized people in this country is not real. We've all witnessed videos of immigrants being kidnapped off of the street, right? We've all witnessed our own communities experience violations that are dangerous. We've seen the persecution of trans people accelerate in this country. We've seen the threat to abortion rights. We've also seen the threat to human rights for many marginalized folks in this country. All of those threats are real. But when you find yourself in a freeze response and you recognize it, one of the things that you need to ask yourself in that moment is, am I actually in any real danger right now? And again, I want to remind you that in many instances, when we're staring into those screens, we can be putting ourselves into a freeze response when we're not under any real threat. Okay. So in the moment, if you recognize that you are in a freeze response, but you yourself are not in any immediate danger, what do you do next? Well, you need to engage in some mindfulness and regulating practices in order to get your central nervous system back into a place of calm. There are practices that we teach about this inside the Ripple Effect Institute in detail. I'm just going to offer you a couple of them right now. Deep breathing for as little as 60 seconds has been shown in studies to re-regulate your central nervous system into a place of calm. Literally in a minute or less, if you engage in these practices, you can get yourself back into a place of feeling safe. Another strategy is something called cold exposure. And no, this is not dunking yourself in a cold tank a la the bro podcasters, okay? This is actually simply splashing some cold water on your face, maybe putting a cold washcloth on the back of your neck. Why? Because temperature exposure actually confuses your central nervous system into going, wonder what's going on here. And even that pause can cause your vagus nerve to start to engage and re-regulate your body. Another option is to just simply sit for a brief, short, calming meditation. There are so many platforms online that have 1 to 3 minute calming reset meditations. I happen to use the Calm app, but there are plenty of others available on YouTube and other platforms for free. And I would encourage you to start building that kind of a practice really into your daily life. That when you're feeling overwhelmed in any way, you take that 1 to 3 minute break, do a short guided meditation, and get yourself back online. So again, we go into these things in great depth inside the Ripple Effect Institute. We have an entire module of, I think it's 7 training videos on how to engage in resilience practices in the context of finding your purpose and making a difference. But these small practices that I've given you today are really the starting point for understanding how to deal with freeze mode. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about is purpose alignment, because one of the things that you will find is that if you know what your purpose is in the context of making change in this era, it's a lot harder to get into that place of panic and freeze. Here's why. When you are aligned with your purpose in the work that you're doing out in the world to make a difference, you're constantly, if you're doing it right, being surrounded by other people who are doing similar kinds of work. And one of the things that that means is that you're surrounded by people who are creating a practice of hope. Okay, this is really important because one of the things that happens when we're constantly exposed to this nonstop barrage of terrible news and trauma and oppression is that it's really easy to fall into this place of thinking that there is no hope. What's the point? What's the point of trying to make a difference, right? In fact, if you know what your purpose is and you are consistently taking steps in that direction on a daily basis to make a difference, you will find yourself not falling prey to the sense that everything is hopeless as frequently. Now, I'm not going to claim it goes away forever. There's definitely been times, even in the 10 years where we've been doing this work here with change agents who are committed to making like generational kinds of shifts. There have definitely been moments even still where I have these moments of like, oh my God, it's so bad. And part of that is about what we're living through, right? But at the same time, when you know why you're doing what you're doing and you're consistently taking steps in that direction, it's much harder to feel hopeless. So one of the things that we do inside the Ripple Effect Institute is that we work with our clients to clarify what you're here to do. And again, this is like baseline stuff for creating the kind of impact that our clients want to make in the world. You need a really clear understanding of why you're here, right? And what the purpose is of the work that you are doing to create change. Because it can't just be this scattershot approach of, I'm going to show up for one protest and maybe I'll show up for one meeting over here and maybe I'll try this thing that I've been invited to. No. That kind of scattershot approach, by the way, is something of a panic response because it's the sense that we ought to be doing something, but we're not really sure what to do, but everything is falling apart and we need to do something now. Okay. That's actually very counterproductive in this era to creating the kind of change that we need to save lives and help keep people safe and really build a better future. What we need is to be very clearly aligned with our intent and our purpose in creating change. And that's going to be different depending on who you are. Okay. Again, I know we're all here in this era wanting to fight back against fascism. Absolutely, right? We want to stop the regime. We want to stop the rise of right-wing politics. We want to make sure that we get to a place where people are free and there is true social justice. I assume that's why you're here. But fundamentally, if we are not in alignment with what our particular role is in that, we will not be effective in building change. So getting aligned with your purpose and getting aligned with people who are doing work in the same vein will help to keep you from getting frozen because it will put you in a continuous state of reminder that you can actually make a difference consistent with your skills and the reason why you're here. And one of the things that we're really good at inside the Ripple Effect Institute is helping you figure out what you're here to do. And most importantly, we want to do that so you're not scattering all of your talents and skills across a swath of opportunities where you're actually diluting the impact that you could make. Okay, third thing, when you're in freeze response, one of the things that can help you get out of it really quickly is having the right kinds of support around you in the form of really solid community and tactical skills to decide what to do next, okay? So one of the things that really worries me, honestly, about the way in which people are approaching creating change in this era, especially with the fire hose of terrible news and horrible actions that are taking place on a daily basis, is that if you do not have good community around you that is showing up for you and that is there to support you, you can feel really alone. And that sense of feeling alone and like nobody gets it can actually also be something that puts you into freeze mode in and of itself. So one of the things that I want to encourage you to think about here is what kind of community do you have around you? Are you engaging where you live, or for that matter, in terms of a more formal group structure for change, in building out mutual aid networks that serve you in terms of the emotional support that you need while you're simultaneously giving back? And this kind of structured support is really critical in this era. Like, I can't emphasize this enough. Everyone from the leaders of the biggest resistance movements in this country, many of whom are friends of mine, to folks who are doing tiny little community action where they live that makes a really big difference actually in your own community, need community support. We need people who see us, who on days where we're having a really hard time and we do feel frozen, can show up and say, it's okay, I got you. Here's how we're going to keep going. Here's the next step we're going to take. Even in my world, with the work that I've been doing over my entire life, but particularly over the last 10 years, I have a group chat with other really significant organizers and activists around the country. And on bad days, we show up for each other. We make sure that we're there to give one another, from a place of really deep understanding, the sort of reflection and boosting and even pep talks sometimes when we need it. That's really critical when you're feeling frozen and shut down and sometimes like things are really hopeless. But the other thing that's really key in this is you need tactical skills. And one of the things that I find with the clients that we work with is that even the people who show up with the best of intentions, saying like, I know I'm here to make a difference, often lack a deep understanding of how to actually execute on that. And so one of the things that we do inside the Ripple Effect Institute that's really key is we give people the tools and the frameworks and the feedback they need to move from that place of thought into action. And in a really key way, knowing how to make a difference will stop you from getting into freeze mode. Or if you're already there, looking at a menu of options, here's the next step I can take, here's the people I can turn to, here are the ways in which I'm going to keep building the impact that I'm here to make, can actually leverage you out of freeze response really quickly. So this combination of structured support and tactical skills is fundamental to figuring out how to get yourself out of freeze mode to begin with. Now, in all of this, I want to make something really clear. What we're not trying to do here is bypass, because occasionally there are folks out there who say it's all love and light, and if you just get into that space, none of this will matter, right? We're not bypassing emotion here. We're actually alchemizing it. We're taking that space of being frozen and afraid, and we're turning it into fuel. We're taking that fear and we're turning it into a direction, to a series of choices, and to implementing certain skills in a way that's really going to move the needle. The one secret I want to let you in on here is that everybody who's doing this kind of work right now is living with a certain low-grade level of fear. Nobody's walking around unafraid. Even though sometimes people may telegraph that, it's actually not true. Everyone right now who is aligned with progressive causes and doing good work on behalf of people who need it is walking around quite frequently afraid. And that's very normal. We're living in conditions right now that are abnormal, and being afraid of things that could be coming down the pike or are happening right now is a normal response. The question is, what do you do with those emotions when you have them? Do you allow those to stop you, to keep you in a place of not taking action, or do you actually turn that response into something that moves you forward toward creating the change you're here to make? Okay, so I want to take you through a few examples here, because sometimes people have a hard time understanding what this looks like in practical terms when they're in that kind of freeze state. So let me give you an example from our own Ripple Effect Institute clients. Kara was a nonprofit executive in a deep red state when she came to us, and she was drowning in overwhelm. She was feeling like she was really carrying the burden of the work that she was doing in the nonprofit to a point where she seriously could not decide what to do next. And she was really deep in that freeze state. She had founded this nonprofit to make a difference. She had done a lot of good work over the years, but now, in the face of this new regime, she really couldn't bring herself to figure out what to do next. And she was dissociating at work, buried under staffing needs, taking on work that she shouldn't have been taking on fundamentally. And the crushing weight of the crisis in her local area particularly was causing her to really question whether or not she should just abandon her mission entirely. In other words, she came to us really in full freeze mode. Fast forward 6 months, and it's a whole other ballgame. She's in a place now where she's restructured what's happening in relation to the nonprofit. She has created circumstances where another leader has now risen to the top of that nonprofit to run it, and she has returned to a place of being very deeply focused on the mission that she set out to accomplish in the first place. And that, by the way, has freed up a lot of time for her to do work in her local community consistent with her gifts and her aims. So by attaching herself to strategies to get herself out of freeze, by getting realigned with her purpose, she's now able to actually make a much larger difference. And she's also, by the way, taken herself out of a state of burnout. And she's transformed her situation now to a place where she's making a massive difference inside her red state. Another example is Mary, who came to us as a therapist, and she had been working with clients in the LGBTQ community and seeing the absolute harm and struggle and devastation of the persecution, particularly of trans youth, where she lives. She came to us in a place of really not knowing what to do next and feeling like she didn't know how to use her voice for change. She had some ideas about things that she might want to do, but she really wasn't clear on what the execution of that could look like. Again, she arrived really feeling frozen, overwhelmed by the trauma that she was witnessing on a daily basis, and not sure how to put that into a practice that would allow her to make the change that she really wanted to make for her clients and out in the world. Now, she's leading resilience workshops nationwide for progressive organizations, and particularly for parents of LGBTQ kids. She's equipping hundreds of justice workers every month with skills that they need to actually keep going, and she herself has found her voice. She's found her purpose, and she's out there actually speaking to the challenges of people who are trying to make a difference right now in a way that aligns with her underlying mission. Final example, we've got a whole ton of visual artists inside the Ripple Effect Institute who came to us in a place of having no formal experience on how to make a difference, but very much feeling the pull to use their visual art in ways that create change. One of those folks is someone who came to us with a very scattershot approach. Again, frozen. I'm doing this. I just have to do something, but I don't know what it is. Now she's in a place where, in addition to creating citywide art campaigns where she lives in the Pacific Northwest, she's also starting to host formal gatherings in her art exhibition space on behalf of creatives who want to make a difference. And she was able to get to that place by learning how to get herself out of freeze mode by aligning with resilience practices, with her purpose, and with the strategic skills she needed to make a difference. In other words, what I'm telling you today in this video, you guys, it works. It works really well, because when we find a way to implement resilience practices, align with our purpose and mission, and then acquire the skills and the strategy that we need to make a difference, all bets are off. And again, we have hundreds of clients under our belt who have moved from this place of being frozen to creating really significant initiatives locally and nationally that are making a massive difference in this critical time. Okay, so if you've been watching this video to this point, you understand that freeze mode is something that will really keep you from living into your purpose of making a difference and helping people in this incredibly challenging time. If you're stuck in that freeze space, I want you to hear this loud and clear. There's nothing wrong with you and you're not broken. You're not too late. You're not behind and you're not alone. But you do need to take one first brave step in order to leverage yourself out of that. And sometimes it's even a small one. And so today I'm going to invite you to take that one step by booking a free strategy call with my team. We're here to help you figure out where you are and what's next and how to start moving again. And one of the things that we will help you do is to get yourself out of freeze response strategically, sustainably, and with support. And the Ripple Effect Institute is not just watch a couple training videos and get out into the world. We are a strategy incubator and a community of support that will be with you for your entire change-making journey. And we are here to help you get to that place where you are living fully into your purpose so you can create a legacy level impact for this moment, but also for generations to come. If this calls to you, and if you want to get out of your space of being frozen and into a place of really making a difference, book that strategy call right now at the link. And we will help you figure out how to move from being frozen to being someone who really makes a difference consistent with your zone of genius in this moment. You can be that calm, empowered, purpose-driven leader who's creating tremendous change right now. You can be the person inside your skill set who is making a huge difference in your own community and beyond. You can be that leader who's creating a legacy level impact to build a future that is defined by freedom and justice for all. I want to thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if this content calls to you, and I will see you in the next video.